Diana Rose stepped through the glass doors of Sterling Innovations at exactly 7:30 in the morning, her heels clicking softly against the marble floor. The towering building in downtown Dallas gleamed with steel and ambition, housing one of America's most successful tech companies. For 3 years, Diana had walked these halls as the executive assistant to CEO Jonathan Sterling, managing his impossible schedule and endless demands with quiet efficiency. The elevator carried her to the 40th floor, where she settled at her desk outside Jonathan's corner office. Her workspace was immaculate, every file organized, every pen in place. Diana had learned early that perfection was expected, though rarely acknowledged. She wore her usual uniform of neutral colors, a beige blazer over a cream blouse. Her dark hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Safe, invisible. Exactly how she had trained herself to be. Jonathan Sterling strode into the office an hour later, his presence commanding immediate attention. At 35, he carried himself with the confidence of a man who had built an empire before most people finished college. His dark suits were custom-tailored, his black hair perfectly styled, his green eyes sharp with intelligence and ambition. He barely glanced at Diana as he passed her desk, already speaking into his phone about acquisition deals and market projections. Diana had memorized every detail of his preferences. Coffee, black with 1 sugar cube, never stirred. Meetings scheduled with 15-minute buffers to account for his tendency to run long. His dislike of overly bright lighting during afternoon presentations. She knew he rubbed his temple when stressed and tapped his fingers when impatient. Yet after 3 years, he knew almost nothing about her. The morning unfolded in its familiar rhythm. Diana fielded calls, rescheduled appointments, and prepared briefings for Jonathan's back-to-back meetings. She was a master of anticipation, solving problems before they became crises, smoothing the path for others to succeed. When the catering company called to say they would be late for the board lunch, Diana quickly arranged for the hotel next door to provide service instead. When a key investor's flight was delayed, she rescheduled the entire afternoon without missing a beat. Yet she remained background noise in her own life. Diana had not always been invisible. In college at the University of Texas, she had been student body president, captain of the debate team, and voted most likely to change the world. She had dreams of starting her own nonprofit, of making a difference in communities like the small town where she grew up. But student loans, family medical bills, and the harsh reality of the job market had led her to this desk, to this safe but soul-crushing routine. The breaking point came during the quarterly investor meeting. Diana sat in the corner of the boardroom, taking notes as Jonathan presented the company's latest achievements to a room full of suit-clad executives. The numbers were impressive, the future bright, and Jonathan commanded the room with his usual charisma. Diana had helped prepare every slide, every talking point, every contingency plan. As the meeting wound down, she gathered her materials and prepared to leave when she overheard a conversation that would change everything. 2 investors were speaking with Jonathan near the floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. "Your operation runs so smoothly, Jonathan," one investor commented. "Your assistant seems very capable." Jonathan's response came without hesitation, his tone casual and dismissive. "Diana is perfect for the job, completely forgettable and plain, exactly what you want in staff. No drama, no distractions, just efficient work. That's why she has lasted so long." The words hit Diana like ice water. She continued packing her folder as if nothing had happened, her face carefully composed. But inside, something cracked. Forgettable, plain. The assessment wasn't delivered with malice, which somehow made it worse. It was simply his honest opinion, spoken as if she were office equipment rather than a human being. Diana finished her tasks and left the building on time that evening, but the words echoed in her mind during the drive to her modest apartment in Deep Ellum. She climbed the stairs to her second-floor unit, set down her keys with practiced precision, and finally allowed herself to feel the weight of what she had heard. Standing in front of her bathroom mirror, Diana studied her reflection with new eyes. When had she become so careful to blend in that she had disappeared entirely? Her clothes were chosen for invisibility, her makeup minimal, her entire presentation designed to avoid notice. She had spent 3 years making herself smaller, quieter, more forgettable. believing it would keep her safe and employed. But safety had become a prison. Diana opened her laptop and began typing, her fingers moving with sudden purpose. She researched confidence coaching, public speaking classes, and career development programs. She bookmarked articles about personal branding and professional growth. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to imagine a different version of her life, one where she was seen, heard, and valued. That night, Diana made a decision that would change everything. She would stop apologizing for existing. She would stop hiding behind beige blazers and careful silence. She would reclaim the person she had been before. Fear convinced her that invisibility was strength. Tomorrow would look the same to everyone else, but for Diana Rose, the transformation had already begun. The invisible woman was about to become impossible to ignore. 3 weeks had passed since Diana overheard Jonathan's cutting words, and the change was happening quietly like sunrise breaking through morning fog. She had enrolled in a weekend confidence workshop led by a former Fortune 500 executive who taught professional women how to command respect in corporate environments. The first lesson had been simple but revolutionary. Stop apologizing for taking up space. Diana's mornings now began differently. She woke 15 minutes earlier to practice power poses in front of her bedroom mirror. Shoulders back, chin lifted, hands on her hips. The exercise felt silly at first, but gradually she noticed her posture improving throughout the day. She replaced her beige and gray wardrobe with jewel tones that complemented her olive skin and dark eyes. Deep emerald blouses, navy blazers with subtle patterns, burgundy scarves that added warmth to her face. The transformation was subtle but unmistakable. Diana began speaking up in meetings, offering insights instead of just taking notes. When the marketing team struggled with messaging for a new product launch, she suggested they focus on how the technology would improve daily life rather than technical specifications. The campaign became their most successful in 2 years. Jonathan noticed, though he couldn't quite pinpoint what had changed. His usually invisible assistant was becoming increasingly difficult to ignore. Her reports were sharper, her suggestions more strategic. During a particularly stressful week, when 3 major deals threatened to collapse, Diana had quietly orchestrated solutions. Coordinating between legal teams, smoothing over communication breakdowns, and ensuring every deadline was met. The annual company retreat in Aspen arrived in early December. A weekend designed to reward the executive team and key staff for another profitable year. The luxury resort nestled against snow-covered mountains offered world-class skiing, spa treatments, and networking opportunities. Diana had planned every detail, from dietary accommodations to entertainment. But for the first time, she was attending as a participant rather than just the organizer. On Friday evening, the resort hosted a welcome reception around their heated outdoor pool. Steam rose from the turquoise water while fire pits provided warmth for guests in designer winter coats. Diana had spent the day in meetings, contributing ideas for the company's expansion into sustainable technology. Her confidence had grown with each successful presentation. Nod of approval from department heads who had never really seen her before. As the evening reception began, Diana stood at the edge of the pool deck, watching colleagues mingle under strings of golden lights. She wore a sophisticated black coat over her swimsuit. Having decided to join the group that would brave the heated pool despite the December cold. For years, she would have declined such social activities, preferring the safety of her room and room service. Tonight was different. Diana unbuttoned her coat and let it fall away, revealing an elegant navy swimsuit that complemented her figure with understated grace. The cut was classic, sophisticated, designed for confidence rather than attention. She had chosen it carefully, not to seduce or shock, but to feel beautiful in her own skin. The conversation around the pool gradually quieted as Diana walked to the pool's edge with unhurried grace. Her dark hair caught the firelight, her movements fluid and self-assured. She wasn't performing or posing. She was simply present in a way she had never allowed herself to be. Jonathan stood frozen near the bar, his glass of whiskey forgotten in his hand. For 3 years, Diana had been furniture in his peripheral vision, efficient and forgettable. Now she commanded the space like she owned it, and the shift was so dramatic it left him speechless. This wasn't the mousy assistant who brought him coffee and took his calls. This was a woman who had somehow blossomed when he wasn't paying attention. Diana slipped into the warm water with a small smile, her composure unshakable. She wasn't seeking anyone's approval or attention. She had simply decided to stop hiding from herself, and the result was magnetic. Other guests found themselves drawn to her natural warmth and intelligence. Engaging her in conversations about everything from sustainable business practices to travel recommendations, standing in the pool, water lapping at her shoulders, Diana felt more herself than she had in years. The woman who had been student body president was still there. Beneath the layers of careful invisibility she had wrapped around herself, she had spent 3 years believing that success meant disappearing. But now she understood that true success meant showing up completely. Jonathan watched from the sidelines, his mind racing. How had he missed this transformation? When had his plain, forgettable assistant become someone who could quiet a room simply by entering it? The realization hit him like cold air. Diana hadn't changed overnight. She had been extraordinary all along, and he had been too blind and arrogant to see it. As the evening wound down and guests began retiring to their rooms, Jonathan found himself questioning everything he thought he knew about leadership, about respect, and about the woman who had been quietly holding his professional life together while he took all the credit. Diana emerged from the pool with the same grace she had entered, wrapping herself in a plush towel. She caught Jonathan's stare across the deck and held his gaze for a moment, her expression calm and unreadable. Then she gathered her things and walked toward the resort, leaving him standing alone by the fire pit with the uncomfortable knowledge that everything had shifted. For the first time in his adult life, Jonathan Sterling was the one left speechless. The Monday after the Aspen retreat, Diana sat across from the hiring committee in Sterling Innovation's executive conference room, her portfolio spread before her on the polished mahogany table. She had applied for the newly created position of Director of Community Outreach, a role that would remove her from Jonathan's direct supervision and place her in charge of the company's charitable initiatives and community partnerships. 3 weeks of preparation had led to this moment. Diana had researched sustainable business practices, drafted proposals for employee volunteer programs, and outlined strategies for partnering with local schools to promote STEM education. She spoke with clarity and passion about creating meaningful connections between Sterling Innovations and the Dallas community, her voice steady and confident. The committee, led by Senior Vice President Rebecca Martinez, listened intently as Diana presented her vision. She proposed mentorship programs for underprivileged students, technology grants for small nonprofits, and environmental initiatives that would align with the company's values while making a genuine impact. Her 3 years of understanding Sterling's operations from the inside gave her insights that external candidates couldn't match. "This is exactly the kind of strategic thinking we need," Rebecca said, making notes on her tablet. "Your understanding of our corporate culture, combined with your fresh perspective on community engagement, is impressive." Diana felt a surge of pride that had nothing to do with anyone else's validation. She had earned this opportunity through her own growth and preparation. Win or lose, she had shown up as her authentic self, and that felt like victory enough. Meanwhile, Jonathan paced his office, unable to concentrate on the quarterly reports spread across his desk. Through his glass walls, he could see the empty chair at Diana's desk, and the sight unsettled him in ways he couldn't fully understand. She had requested the morning off for a personal appointment, and he found himself wondering for the first time in 3 years what Diana did with her life outside these walls. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He knew nothing about her dreams, her family, her interests beyond her impeccable work performance. He had treated her like highly efficient software rather than a human being with hopes and ambitions. The woman who had commanded attention at the pool in Aspen had always existed. He had simply been too self-absorbed to notice. That evening, Diana returned to her apartment with a lightness she hadn't felt in years. The interview had gone better than she had dared hope, and regardless of the outcome, she had proven to herself that she could compete at the highest levels. She changed into comfortable clothes and was preparing dinner when her phone buzzed with a text from Jonathan. "Could we talk? I'll come to you if you prefer." Diana stared at the message for several minutes, In 3 years, Jonathan had never asked to meet outside the office, never acknowledged that she had a life beyond her desk. She typed back her address and added, "Give me an hour." When Jonathan arrived at her door, he looked different. Gone was his usual commanding presence, replaced by something more uncertain, more human. Diana invited him in, noting how he took in her space with genuine curiosity. Her apartment was warm and personal, filled with books, plants, photographs of family and friends he had never bothered to learn about. "I owe you an apology," Jonathan began, his voice quieter than she had ever heard it. "Not just for what I said to those investors, but for 3 years of not seeing you as more than an extension of my schedule." Diana settled into her armchair, gesturing for him to take the couch. "I appreciate that," she said carefully. "But apologies don't change patterns, Jonathan. They're just words, unless behavior changes." He leaned forward, hands clasped together. "You're right. I've been thinking about what kind of leader I am, what kind of man I am, and I don't like what I've discovered. I built a company based on innovation and forward thinking, but I've been blind to the talent right in front of me." "I heard about your interview today," he continued. "Rebecca told me your presentation was outstanding. You're going to get that position, and you deserve it. But I need you to know that losing you would be the biggest mistake of my professional life." Diana studied his face, searching for the calculated charm he used in business negotiations. Instead, she saw something raw and honest that she had never witnessed before. "What are you asking me, Jonathan?" "I'm asking for a chance to know the real Diana Rose. Not as my assistant, not as someone who manages my life, but as an equal. As someone whose opinions matter, whose dreams are worth hearing about." He paused, vulnerability evident in his green eyes. "Asking if you could ever see me as more than just the arrogant boss who overlooked you for too long?" Diana felt her heart race, but her mind remained clear. 3 weeks ago, hearing those words would have meant everything to me. "I spent years hoping you would notice me, value me, maybe even care about me as more than your employee." Jonathan's expression fell slightly, but she continued, "But here's what I've learned about myself lately. I don't need your validation to know my worth. I don't need you to see me to know I'm valuable. The woman you're attracted to now is the same woman who was sitting at that desk for 3 years. I just finally decided to stop hiding her." She stood and walked to the window overlooking the Dallas skyline. "If we were to explore something beyond a professional relationship, it would have to be between equals. Two people who respect each other, who see each other clearly, who choose to be together rather than one person rescuing or completing the other." Jonathan rose and joined her at the window, careful to maintain respectful distance. "I understand. And you're right to be cautious. I have a lot to prove, and not just to you. I need to become the kind of man who deserves someone like you. Someone who was extraordinary all along while I was too foolish to notice." Diana turned to face him, her decision crystallizing as she spoke. "I'm going to take that job, Jonathan. I'm going to build something meaningful with my career, regardless of what happens between us personally. If you want to be part of my life, you'll have to earn that place through your actions, not your words." The honesty between them felt like a new beginning, fragile but real. "No." Jonathan nodded slowly, understanding that the woman he had overlooked for 3 years was now writing her own story. And he would be fortunate indeed if she chose to include him in it. "Then I'll start by being the kind of man worthy of your respect," he said quietly. "Everything else can grow from there if you'll let it." Diana smiled, the expression transforming her face with warmth and possibility. "We'll see, Jonathan. We'll see."